Hello guys, this is Veera. Today let's talk about why we need to have a main method in the Spring Boot application. Today one of my students asked me, so why we need to have a main method in the Spring Boot application? He has some confusion to understand. So if we go back to the older way of the applications that we write, so with the JSP, Servlets, or Spring MVC, or Struts, JSF. So basically the applications which we are going to create, so we are going to deploy it in any external server. That could be Tomcat, JBoss, WebSphere, WebLogic, or any other the external servers. So when we run our applications into the external server, basically the every application will have a context path, and the context path which is going to recognize our application, the path or endpoint which we are trying to access, or which we are trying to access the URL. So there basically the application context, in order to run our application or access our endpoints. So basically we are going to have something called a deployment descriptor. That is where we say it's web.xml, and the request goes to the web.xml, and then it identifies the corresponding path, and finally we get the response. That's a older style of application in order to run it in the servers. Whereas in the Spring Boot applications, so we are going to have a main method. So there are multiple reasons. So that is the entry point in order to run our Spring Boot application. That is what the point number one that we say. It's basically the entry point. And the second point, basically, that is to bootstrap our Spring Boot application. And the Spring Boot application, basically, we are going to run it with the external server. Embedded server. Let's say if you wanted to run even in the Spring Boot application also as part of the external server, definitely we don't need the main method. So there we write something called a Spring application builder, or Spring Boot servlet initializer. And then we write or we override the configure method and write the rest of the implementation. It's not mandatory that we need to have a main method in case of external server. If you are going to deploy our application with the embedded Tomcat server, we need to have a main method. That is where it is to bootstrap the Spring Boot application. So that's the point number two. And the next point, so let me show you the IntelliJ. So if you see here, I have an annotation called @Spring Boot application. And we do have a main method. If you see, this particular main method has something called a Spring application dot run. So which is going to run our Spring Boot application. Basically the run which is going to return the configurable application context. That's what you see here. So the configurable application context, again, it's going to extends with the application context object. It's basically to execute the or to run our application as part of the application lifecycle method, right? So basically, in case of Spring Boot application, since we are going to run our application with the embedded server and accessing through the endpoints, we need to have a context. That is where this Spring application context is going to return the context object. So even though we are not going to specify which particular endpoint we need to access, basically that will be decided by this particular application context. So that is the main purpose. We need to have a run method in the Spring main class. That's the application class, which is annotated with the @Spring Boot application. So that is where we need to have this particular main method and the Spring application dot run. So which is going to return the context object. There are cases where you might need to get a particular context. Let's say it could be some controller context, or it could be some service layer context, or any other component. So we can use this particular run method to get a context by using the application context. You can write like this: application context. So let's say you might need to get a context object, something context dot get bean, or you know get bean. So you can define which bean you want to get, and you can get the context object. If at all, if you want to run this particular application with the external server, main method is not a mandatory. You can just write extends Spring Servlet initializer, Spring Boot Servlet initializer. There is something called configure method. You can also copy from this particular Spring Boot Servlet initializer. So there is a config method, config. So you can say config there, and you can just copy paste it. And you can say it's a override method, right? So now builder dot, there is something called builder, not a builder, let's say new application builder, and then you can define the class. So this is how basically, we are going to run this application with the external server. There are a couple of other things that we need to make changes in order to run with the external server. That's all, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please do subscribe and like it.